Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Friday SLO Talk. My name is Jarek Janio. I'm the faculty coordinator from Santa Ana College School of Continuing Education, and this is step 2 of our guide to student learning assessment, SLO statement design, and Bloom's taxonomy. Enrique has prepared slides for us, so if you could please move to slide number 1. I would like to share some thoughts on the topic because I like to go sort of to the original source of the information that we are discussing. And I was able, in the course of a few days, as I started reading the original taxonomy of educational objectives published in 1956, I was able to extract some couple of thoughts that I think are really important as guiding principles for our discussion here. Bloom's taxonomy has been developed in order to organize and in order to organize our thinking about what it is that students are learning, and that learning is expressed in competency and skill attainment. In other words, in terms of student behavior. And here's the first thought that comes to mind. This is a direct quote from Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives. This taxonomy is designed to be a classification of the student behaviors which represent the intended outcomes of the educational process. And I believe that key phrase here is the student behavior. Just this morning, it just so happened I was at the parent conference at my son's school, and the teacher said to me, well, I watch them, I really do, because otherwise I don't know what's going on in their brains. And it's really struck me that that's perhaps a thought that we really need to carry forward when we are having these discussions. We talk quite a bit about student experience, student engagement. Those are very lofty and idealistic notions, I suppose. It's just that, what does engagement really mean? How can we measure that students are engaged? And even if we do, what difference does it make in their learning? We are really not very good about articulating these notions. So the difference that we expect in student behavior is the focus of or really one of the guiding principles behind which Bloom's taxonomy was developed. So again, what we are after is articulating our expectations as to what it is that our students and not teachers, our students are going to be able to do. And since I mentioned teachers, the second quote here is, we are not attempting to classify the instructional methods used by teachers, the ways in which teachers relate themselves to students, or the different kinds of instructional materials they use. That's also a very, very important consideration here, because it really speaks to the importance of paying attention to the outcome of instructional activities. So, and outcomes as understood by changes in behavior. So what needs to be pointed out here is that it really doesn't matter what teachers do. What matters is what students take away with them from their instructional settings, instructional activities. And I was just so very happy to discover these thoughts that, again, were articulated back in 1956. And it seems that in our language and the system of accountability, driven mainly by budget, and things like diploma attainment, persistence, attendance, and GPAs have been lost. So I just wanted to bring those at the beginning of today's conversations, bring these thoughts to the forefront as guiding principles behind what it is that Bloom's intent was. Now, let me just pause at this, because we do have 4 magnificent, just spectacular presenters waiting for us, so we'll move on. But I am sure that the discussion about Bloom's taxonomy is going to be continued. So it is still very much the Benjamin Bloom himself pointed out in the book, it's still very much work in the making. So it's going to be a living document, and our thinking, our understandings will always evolve, will always change. So good morning, welcome again, everyone. I am just so pleased to again be joined by our coaches, the community colleges coordinators from throughout the state of California. Enrique, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jarek. Well said. And keep in mind that, we're not emphasizing taxonomy. There's multiple taxonomy. So well said, Jarek, for your wonderful introduction. Today in agenda, we have step 2, the SLO statement design taxonomy. We have 4 presenters, Bethany Tasaka from San Bernardino Valley College, Tricia William from Long Beach City College, Melinda Manatlo, I'm sorry if I butcher your names, Long Beach City College, and Darla Anderson from California State University, Northridge. Bethany, would you like to go first?
Sure, just introduction, yeah?
Yes.
Sure. My name is Bethany Tasaka. I'm out of San Bernardino Valley College in the Inland Empire in Southern California. I am brand new to curriculum chair this year, and that's been a whole new experience for me, but I've also been the outcomes faculty lead for a little bit over at my college, and I'm currently trying to navigate those 2 roles and how they're different and how they're the same, and hopefully develop an outcomes committee for myself. So that's a little bit about me. Oh, and I'm math faculty. I always forget to throw that part out there. So
Thank you, Tricia. Tricia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tricia Wilging. I teach in the Reading and Teacher Preparation Department at Long Beach City College, and I have been the Student Learning Outcomes Coordinator, Assessment of Student Learning Outcomes Subcommittee Chair for the last 2 years at LBCC. And I have brought my esteemed colleague, Melinda, with me today. She serves with me on the ASLO subcommittee, and I'm just so thrilled that she's here. So I'll let you take it away, Melinda.
Go for Melinda.
Hi, I'm Melinda. I work in the Communication Studies Department at Long Beach City College, and I have been in the past, just recently, the facilitator for the department, so SLO facilitator, as well as a committee member on the ASLO committee. And we, when I was facilitator, we kind of pioneered moving our assessments to Canvas. So helpful in kind of taking all of those and moving them onto Canvas, which has been really, which has been wonderful in terms of getting more access to more data. We also look at I was also helpful in, I was part of a committee that came up with our latest institutional learning outcomes. So I'm here today to kind of talk about my experience as a faculty member, doing some technical review of submissions of new and updated or modified SLOs, PLOs. So
Thank you. And our last presenter, Darla.
Yes. Hi, I'm Darla Anderson, and as it indicates there, I teach in the Communication Studies Department at Cal State Northridge. I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Oxnard College, and my experience with assessment was the annual assessments with our department at Northridge, and then some previous experience working in terms of assessment for WASC. And I use Bloom's taxonomy very much in my course and course curriculum.
Thank you and welcome. And thank you for your collaboration and cooperation for being presenters today. Bethany, would you like to start?
yes, I'm up first. I could share my screen. All righty. So just we kind of did our intros, but just a little bit. I'm coming from the California community college system, so that's a lot of the lens that I use in putting this together. So recognizing there's a lot of, there's handfuls of 4 years in the chat. There's, people who aren't from California, but, that's the institution that I work at. And that's a lot of the mindset that I'm coming from. So I kind of wanted to just start by outlining the outcomes process. One thing that I have been trying to normalize at my campus is we had a really heavy focus on just SLOs, and it kind of made our other areas feel not as represented. So I've really been trying to normalize just using outcomes as this umbrella term, that there's a process for everything. So again, just some of the lens that I use here. So really the first place where a lot of this SLO writing process, outcomes writing process comes up is with a course or with a program. So either a course gets written, that's a brand new course, or a program gets put together, that's brand new. That should be something initiated by faculty. Again, that's a California community colleges thing. We absolutely want faculty ownership and participation there. Or through the curriculum process, a course will be up for content review. And, there's different cycles that'll happen depending on where your course lives. But it'll be, just time to review the course, time to, have a look at what's there. So really for us, that's the first place where this SLO outcome process starts, because we want to have an idea of, are we starting from nothing? Are you reviewing something that already exists? But a lot of this really lives in, the faculty's court. This is something that we want them to take ownership of. So as they're creating their new course program, reviewing it, they will write outcomes. We do have guides. I'm going to go through that in a moment. But once those are written initially by those faculty or reviewed initially by those faculty, it actually is coming right now to our curriculum committee. So we have the full curriculum committee where you kind of vote and make, decisions about curriculum. But then we have a tech review committee who really, looks at, word choices or alignment of content with objectives, kind of some of the more detailed pieces of looking at a course outline of record. And that's where we currently are reviewing our outcomes. So, somebody will have a course and they'll bring it up for review in tech review, and we'll all sit down and, there's a moment in there where we sit and talk about outcomes and say, okay, how do these outcomes look? We have a rubric, which again, I'll show you in a moment. But we kind of just talk about it. Another way that I'll kind of go about this, and it really depends on the comfort level of the faculty. So if they're, maybe they're writing a brand new course and feel like they have nowhere to start, I'll also just meet with them one-on-one and give them some foundation or review it. And that could happen either early on with this kind of development process, but it could also happen after a tech review meeting. Maybe there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so I'll say, you know what, we can do this offline. Let's sit, I'll meet with you, and we just kind of talk about it and chat about it. And I'll go into what we talk about in a little bit. But those are two kind of ways that currently at my college, those SLOs get reviewed. And then to kind of finalize them, they go through a vote at the curriculum committee as a whole as part of the course outline of record. So the committee will choose to vote, up or down, depending on what's there. So that's kind of a bird's eye view of our process. I think that there are some things long-term that I want to streamline and do a little bit differently. But this is where we are right now. So some things for me when I'm sitting and I'm talking with faculty. So whether this is in a tech review meeting where there's others who are involved, or whether this is kind of a one-on-one or maybe with their department, I really just start by asking them, well, tell me what you want your students to be able to do. What skills should they have by the end of the class? And initially, I really don't focus at all on structure and rubric. I just want them to get their ideas out, kind of, like a word dump. What are the things that you want them to see? So once they kind of have that list, sometimes it's a really long list that we maybe need to refine a little bit. Sometimes it's a very short list and we need to add a few things. But I really just start with that question. And I kind of say, don't look at the course outline of record for just a minute, take a breath, lean back, ask a coworker, but what is it you want students to see? And that gives them some direction. And then after those things are established, after they've written it down, then we sit down and we go, okay, what are the verb choices that you have here? And I'm going to touch a little bit on Bloom's, but we're going to save a little bit of that for Darla a little bit at the end too. So, but what verb choices did you use? You know, is it appropriate for the class? Does it make sense for what you're trying to measure? Does it align with the course content? You know, I see a lot of SLOs that are, you know, oh, they'll pass this board examination. Is that really part of the class, right? And those are just questions that I ask. I try to present everything as a question in return. I think it comes across as a lot less critical that way. At least I sure hope it does. You know, but does it line up with what you're trying to teach them that's happening in the classroom? And really just asking them, what are those most important things? So for the person who writes down, you know, 15 things, 15 skills they want their students to learn, asking them, do you want all 15 to be something that's measured? Is that what's best for the class? Is that what's best for the student? Do we need to cut back? And again, it's always presented as a question because I want to make sure they remember they're the discipline experts. I don't want to step on what they're doing. And also this duplication idea. So sometimes I'm trying to think, I was working with a psych tech faculty the other day, and they had one, I think it was program learning outcomes. They had one that had to do with being able to calculate the appropriate amount of medication that that someone would need, a patient would need. And then right after it, there was one about calculating safe dosages for a shot, right? And, you know, I said, hey, I'm not an expert in your field, but I just want to throw out there, are these two completely separate skills, or are they something that maybe we should merge into one outcome? And I said, I don't know, take a moment and think about it. And, you know, you tell me. And then they kind of sat and thought about it and said, you know, it really is the same thing because it's about safety, it's about accuracy. And then they made the choice to actually merge them into one at the end. So again, I kind of leave it up to them, but really just trying to think about, okay, what do you have? And then what makes sense in terms of laying out individual outcomes. Here's the outcomes rubric that we use on my campus. You know, there are pieces of it I think I want to add more detail to in the long run. It's one of those things, there's just never enough time, right? There's never enough time to get things that we need. But we state at the top of it, you know, this is part of our curriculum committee process. We really want to acknowledge faculty, you are the discipline and content experts. We're not trying to step on it. We kind of mix a little bit of our lingo, but really we don't want to question and say, you know, oh, this outcome doesn't belong in your class. What are you thinking? We really want to focus it more on, is it, and you can see our criteria here, is it student focused? Does it use action verbs from Bloom's taxonomy? Is it measurable? And is it in alignment with what's being taught in the class? So when we say, is it student focused, what we're really trying to ask is this something that the student will actually do themselves? Sometimes I see outcomes written that are about, you know, a lecture that's taught or something the faculty is really doing, something that is covered in terms of, you know, the textbook says this, but it's really not a skill. And that's what we want to, you know, really focus in on. Is this something that the student will do? The student will do that you can measure. The outcomes portion, the action verb portion from Bloom's taxonomy. My next slide, I'll show you the list of verbs that we hand out to everyone. Is it measurable, right? If that's when I see all the time. I'll get something like students will understand basic physics vocabulary, right? I'm like, what does understand mean? And that's usually a question. Again, I just throw it back as a question. What do you mean when you say understand? Well, I want them to be able to write out definitions. Oh, that's a better verb choice. What about write instead of understand? That's clearer to students in terms of what you're expecting from them. And they kind of go, oh, hey, that's right. So, you know, trying to throw it out as a question, I think it's disarming in a lot of ways. And then is the outcome, again, is it aligned with course content and objectives? It does happen from time to time, especially when, you know, you think about our chairs are very busy people, faculty are very busy people. They're trying to, you know, put schedules together, work with their adjuncts, work with their full-timers. Sometimes these things are just, it's like, oh, I just want to get it done. I don't want to sit and do it. And, you know, and they write something down and it may not align quite as much. And so, you know, that's what I see as my job is to kind of come in and say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And just reminding them, you know, I don't think any of this is ever done with bad intentions. It's just, you know, we get in a hurry and we're busy and we just want to get it out of the way. So This is the rubric that we look at as we review. And I'll put this up again in a moment, but we use CurriculumNet Meta to house all of this. This is actually a new system for us. I'm pretty excited about it. And so in terms of this rubric, we would leave comments in the course to recognize whether or not these were met. So a comment could be great outcome, but how is it going to be measured? And lose it for faculty to think about. Doing okay with questions? Good. Yeah. Okay.
We're good.
Okay. So I know this is tiny. I know I'm breaking all the rules of presenting by putting tiny little words up here, but this is just the list of the active verbs for learning outcomes that we share with our faculty. So this is actually the bottom half of that rubric. I just wanted to address them separately. So we actually don't put it out there in the traditional kind of triangular format. There's no real reason why we don't. I think our campus is more or less pretty familiar with this. I might try to change the format at some point, but we'll see. We'll get there when we get there. But what's traditionally at the bottom of the Bloom's taxonomy triangle are our first three groups up here, and then the last three are kind of, so it's a little inverted. But it's just kind of we see it as you start at the top and you kind of work your way down in terms of skill level and what they can demonstrate. That's how we move through it. And I do make a note on mine. I feel like I always harp on the understand verb. I don't actually hate the understand verb, but I do make a note. Our best practices, maybe this isn't the best verb. I'm thinking in the next iteration, I just might remove it altogether. I'll see what my committee thinks and what they think, what they tell me. Okay, so here's a snapshot of what this could look like in Meta. And part of why I wanted to show this to you, this is our CurriculumNet Meta system. It's where our course outline of record lives. It's where we can leave comments and feedback on all sorts of things related to that course outline of record. You can see over here on the left, we have a piece on equity and cultural responsiveness. We have our objectives. So there's all kinds of things tied into it. But this is for an independent math study course. I picked on my own discipline here. And we have a student learning outcomes option. And so what the faculty will do is they'll write that independent study in there. And I'll tell you too, independent study and work study has been a little bit of a challenge for us because it's so broad. How do we write good objectives that are good outcomes that live on a course outline of record? And I think this is a great move in the right direction. So I'm really happy with where this went. But they'll put it on their course outline of record, they'll type it in, and then another important piece of the writing and design of these statements is asking how they tie into the bigger picture. So you can see below this, we have our institutional learning outcomes listed out. We actually recently updated these within maybe the last year and a half. And what the faculty will go in and do, they haven't yet, but they'll go in and they'll align this particular outcome with at least one of these institutional learning outcomes in Meta. And that gives us a lot of reporting capabilities kind of on the back end where we can run reports and see how we're meeting these other outcomes. But it's a great way too to think about how the outcome that you're writing at the course level ties in. I don't have the PLO listed on here, but ties in with the program it's connected to and how all of that ties in with the institutional level and what we're trying to measure. So it's also just recognizing, yeah, it is just one class. This is an independent study. We don't even offer it every semester because it depends on when students want to take it, right? But even that class that's not offered all the time is a piece of the bigger picture of what we're offering to our students. So I kind of want to just put that out there. So another thing I just kind of want to, I try to remind my faculty as we're going through this is I actually would argue that part of this SLO statement design is considering how am I going to assess it? When you put a statement together, something like, write out vocabulary or be able to explain vocabulary terms for, say, a physics class, like I said earlier, right? How are you going to do that? Is that going to be, is that something you could put on an exam? Is that something you could put on a worksheet? But it's kind of thinking about how am I even going to be able to measure whether or not they did it? It is measurable, but the how is not always obvious, right? So I think it's a good conversation for departments to have. And I always say, okay, we wrote this, but now go back to your department and talk with them and say, hey, we wrote these new outcomes, especially the people who teach that class. How are we going to assess it? What ideas do we have? Ask each other, right? Are we going to do something common? Are we going to do our own thing? And I have departments on my campus who do both. I have a few who are very insistent, and they say, no, this is up to each faculty member. We're not going to make any recommendations. It's up to you. Fine. But you know what? At least they talked about it, right? And then I have faculty on the other side, or departments on the other side, who all sit down together and create common assessments, and they work together on this is exactly how we're going to measure it. But to me, what's most important is that conversation is happening. Right? You're talking about, here's this skill that's really important to us. How do I know if a student met that skill or not? And also tying into that, if you do have some sort of common assessment, talking about, well, how are we going to measure that assessment, right? How do we have a rubric? How are we going to look at it? And making sure your rubric is equitable and is fair to the students that you're teaching. So it goes a little bit beyond just, physically writing down what those statements are. But to me, these pieces all tie together in terms of when you write that statement, all of these elements should at least be a consideration, right? It might be a couple of months of work or a semester's worth of work or something like that, but it should all be part of your kind of mental process. I also want to throw out there that it's okay to remind your faculty as you do this, these don't have to be fixed, right? We, and I think I use this term on the next slide, but we want this continuous quality improvement, right? We should not be just writing an outcome and never looking at it again and just recycling it for generations of faculty. There should be a point in there, and that's for us, that's the technical review and course content review process, but there should be a point in there where you sit down as a department or as the folks who actually teach the class and say, is this still working? Is this still what we want to measure? Is this skill still important? And so I think that's a little bit of a safety net when you're working with faculty and writing this and letting them know, hey, if you do this for a few semesters and you realize this is not working, you can change it. Now, I will say every campus is going to have slightly different approaches, right? But that's a really important thing for them to know, because sometimes when we're writing this, right, again, we have all these things going on and we feel all this pressure of, I have to get it right. And if I don't get it right, what am I doing? And it's okay to try something. We have our entire science division right now, I'm really proud of them, is working on really truly infusing DEIA work into their course outlines of record. And part of that is they're writing student learning outcomes that are, I don't want to say fully experimental, it's not quite that far, but they're really trying different outcomes to try to represent diversity and equity and access for their students. And I think that's a really cool approach. So this is, just reminding them, it's okay if you go through a few semesters and you just need to rewrite it. That's part of the process as well. So a few things that I've learned over time that I just want to put out there. Make sure that the faculty you're working with feel like their expertise is protected. I think in my earlier days of doing it, I maybe approached it as a little too like, hey, you really should change this, as opposed to presenting it as a question. And because you don't want it to feel like you're kind of telling these people what they have to do, right? They're your colleagues. They're also discipline experts. It does help to know your campus culture and, the way everybody operates. But if they know that you're coming from a place of, I'm really just trying to, center the students, I'm really trying to center this equity, I think that disarms quite a bit. And when you really say, like, you're the expert in business, I'm not trying to step on your business knowledge, I just want to make sure this is measurable, right? It can be very disarming. Also, really encourage your departments to work together. This shouldn't be one person, I know chairs get paid or you have some sort of reassignment, hopefully they do, right? If not, go talk to your unions. But I know that one person it's officially their job, but the more people who are involved in this process, the better. And my recommendation actually is, if people are asking you for these one-on-one appointments, go to them, go to their office, go to their kind of territory, right? Sit in their department meetings so that it's kind of emphasizing that, hey, this is your thing, I'm just here to support you. I think that's a safe approach, right? It makes them feel like, okay, it's still my class. I'm still the one in charge, right? Really remind them that students are the center of this. And we're really trying to think about, how equity, how our practices promote that diversity and that access, that should be at the center of what we do. And sometimes we need that actual verbal reminder in the middle of this. And also, sometimes we really overthink this and we stress out about it. I've had some people tell me like they're losing sleep over worrying about getting these outcomes right. It's like, no, I don't want you to lose sleep. Again, it's that continuous quality improvement. Put it down for now and get it in as best shape as you can, and then let it ride for a semester or two and come back. That's okay. That's part of us learning how to do this best as well. So it's just knowing it doesn't have to be this beautiful, perfect thing out of the gate. Give it time. For me, some areas of growth that I'm hoping to see on my campus is I really want to have an outcomes committee. I don't officially have one at the moment. I think that's where we're heading. It's just momentum is not quite in the right place. I need answers to things like, well, where's that committee going to live? And depending on where you are in this process, you may or may not have a committee already, right? Do we need a full committee that lives on its own? Should this be a subcommittee that's part of curriculum? We've actually had it live with accreditation as well. Does that make sense for you? In my opinion, the more people who are looking at this, the better. Right now, I think it is mostly me and a few folks on tech review, but I would like to expand that radius so that there's more people. Processes beyond the actual student learning outcome. Again, for me, an area I need to work on is our service area outcomes. Those are the ones at my campus. These are the ones that align with student services. I don't have a great process for that, and that's something that I'm working on. I'm hoping this semester. I need a database where they're all not just listed, but they're accurate, they're vetted with dates and times attached to it. I need a more solid evaluation process, and hopefully this year we're moving to having the submissions put on CurriculumNet Meta. And then other things, just making sure I have buy-in. I need to make sure, if I'm trying to develop a new committee, my Senate supports me. I need to make sure the accrediting committee sees what we're doing and says, yes, that's the right direction. And I also want to make sure I touch base with student services. I think sometimes, that's a silo and a line we draw and we go, we're instructional over here and you're non-instructional over there. We all have outcomes. They just might look a little different. And I think for me, having that unity can go a long way. So that's all I have for you. You have some other fantastic people who want to share with you what they've got. Enrique, are there any questions for me?
No.
Cool. All right.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you.
I will stop sharing.
Tricia.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And I just wanted to share that I thought Bethany did such an excellent job of framing this conversation, right? Presenting it really in a way that shows kind of a holistic process. And I just very much appreciate her perspective. Even the little things, like remembering that our faculty colleagues are the experts in their disciplines and not encroaching on their, maybe on their territory, but not even that, but just really giving them the honor and the respect as our colleagues, right? Seeking their expertise, because if they're invested in the process and there's the buy-in, then that will affect every facet of the process, right? From statement design to assessment to analysis of results to taking those actions to improve student learning, right? Everything throughout the process. So I just really appreciated that perspective, and especially how it's woven into what she's doing in curriculum. So I think that those were some great lessons learned. So thank you so much for that, Bethany. And then I think Melinda and our presentation today is focused a little bit more on the aspect of SLOs and statement design, but also how do we conduct or carry out that technical review. So as far as SLOs are concerned, there is a facet of the curriculum process in our routine course review process that asks faculty as they're conducting their routine course review to consider their SLO statements, right? But there are many times, especially because we have a 2-year cycle at LBCC of assessment and analysis and action, that faculty are looking at their SLOs and they're saying, hey, we really don't like this. We're working toward that continuous improvement piece that Bethany mentioned, right? And we feel like this doesn't match current research in our field any longer, or we think that it's not expressed in such a student-friendly way, or we think we can infuse more equity into the statement design, right? And so they want to either inactivate some SLOs and create new ones, or they want to modify what they have. And so Melinda, my presentation more is within that framework of when folks are submitting or endeavoring to update or create new modified or inactivated SLOs. And so we just wanted to emphasize again that some of the definitions, SLOs are statements of overarching knowledge, skills, abilities, and values that students should acquire in a course or in a program or at an institution. And they should be descriptions, and I think that this was mentioned earlier, they're measurable, but they should be descriptions of observable behavior and should demonstrate core student understanding and application of a subject. Some goals for the expression of SLO statements: they should begin with a verb from Bloom's taxonomy. They should address the expected domain and level of student learning, and they should address competency rather than content, and should again focus on that more overarching concepts than the discrete objectives or the small lessons. And so those are just some guiding principles that we have. And then also we have an assessment of student learning outcomes subcommittee at Long Beach City College, and it is a subcommittee of our curriculum committee. So the two groups work in tandem. Our curriculum chair is, sits on our committee, and then our subcommittee is composed of faculty, staff, administrators. We have a space on the committee for students to participate, but right now we don't have a student sitting. We have had students serve with us in the past, but it's a really neat opportunity to consider outcomes from all the various perspectives across the campus and to have some really unique and meaningful conversations concerning them. And so what we've tried to do at LBCC is to create a course SLO checklist and a program SLO checklist. And I will drop these files in the chat at the end of our presentation. But anyway, this is a checklist that's simply used by Assessment of Student Learning Outcomes Subcommittee. It is posted publicly online. It's given to our SLO facilitators, who are our department level liaisons, and who often spend more time with those one-on-one meetings and working with faculty in the construction of SLO statements. Of course, I do a lot of that myself, because it's just great to have these kinds of conversations with faculty who are interested in looking at student learning and endeavoring to continuously improve. But anyway, this is our course SLO checklist, and this is posted publicly online and given to our facilitators because we really want to be transparent about our process, right? We want everybody at the institution to be clear concerning what ASLO feels are the standards for SLO statement design, right? And so again, I know the text is very tiny, but we want it to begin with 1 or 2 at most Bloom's taxonomy verbs, because if it gets beyond that, it's very difficult to measure, right? We want it to address the expected domain, which means it needs to address the level of learning that is expected in the course. It should be written as an outcome, not a measurable student achievement objective, like students will get a 3 out of 5 on the quiz, right? Well, that's great. That will lead them to achieve, or a 4 out of 5, but what we really want them to do, we want to know not what they will, what score they'll receive, but what kind of learning they're really doing in the course. We want to make sure that the course SLO is appropriate. In other words, it aligns with the course outline of record, that it is consistent with college level work, and that it especially at the course level, that it could potentially map to or align with our program student learning outcomes or our institutional student learning outcomes. We want it to be understandable and we want it to be measurable. With the program SLO checklist, it looks very much the same, but we do it. Our PSLOs are broader, right? And so we want to make sure that they're collaboratively authored and collectively accepted, right? So because many faculty teach courses within a program, and so we want faculty to acknowledge, like, yes, I'm not going out on a limb and doing something on my own and expecting all the other program faculty to comply with my wishes, but we're working together to create program learning outcomes that we feel are representative of our courses and that are the key things we want our students to walk away with. We're promising that when they leave our program, they will possess these skills and abilities, and we all feel good about it. Again, we want them to start with Bloom's verbs. We want them to be in alignment with the college's mission, right, and values. And we want them to be, like course outcomes, understandable and measurable. And then we have some additional criteria for CTE awards. We want to make sure that they're in alignment with the in-demand skills or professions related to the awards. And for ADT or transfer awards, we want to ensure that the PSLO will prepare students for transfer to a four-year university. So also on the checklist, you'll see that some of our criteria say not applicable. That means when ASLO is evaluating the SLOs, ASLO isn't responsible for saying yes or no, because the committee doesn't necessarily know if it's collaboratively authored. The committee doesn't necessarily know, because we're not all content area experts in the discipline, if the PSLO is going to prepare students for transfer necessarily, right? But these are the criteria that we want our faculty to consider in writing SLO statements. And so then ASLO, as they receive the course and program SLOs for review, our members will complete this checklist. And I'm not going to talk too much about that because Melinda is going to share from her perspective as a member of the committee. Also, we have created these Google Forms, and these forms are what our SLO facilitators or our faculty authors use to submit their new, modified, or inactivated SLOs. And so you can see there's a link to access their facilitator information. There is clearly the list of criteria that we want them to consider. And so the first question was, have you considered the evaluation criteria before submitting this change or creation to ASLO, right? And then of course, they'll say, do I want to create an SLO? Do I want to modify an SLO? Do I want to inactivate it? And then once they click on that button, the form will branch to the appropriate questions so that faculty authors can fill out the pertinent information. And so again, these forms are publicly accessible through our Canvas website. I guess not publicly, they're accessible to everybody in our institution. Okay, so then when I receive the submissions from this Google form, I get this spreadsheet, and as you all probably know, having used Google Forms, it's a little bit messy in the back end, right? And so what I do, or somebody on my team, maybe my SLO analyst or maybe an assistant, sometimes we put together, not sometimes, every month, we put together what we call our technical review consent agenda. And this is sent to the ASLO subcommittee members as homework. And so it contains all of the pertinent information. So for example, our faculty in our fashion department want to modify their SLO. So this was the original language. This is the language that they want to modify it to. And this is the assessment method they intend to use. So again, it lets us know, for example, if faculty are asking students to do a presentation, but then they're trying to assess it via a quiz, that doesn't always work, right? If they're assessing communication skills, oral communication skills, how can you assess that via a quiz? That doesn't work. So it has to be a rubric, right? And so it presents all of the pertinent information to our subcommittee members. And then the email goes out with this homework as an attachment, any other documents to review. And Melinda, for example, would be assigned 1, 2, and 3, and another member of my committee would be assigned 4, 5, and 6. And so then their responsibility before the next subcommittee meeting is to complete the checklist for the SLOs to which they have been assigned. And so at this point, I will pass it to Melinda, and she'll share a little bit about her experience of carrying out and conducting that technical review.
Tricia, quick question.
Sure.
Is it possible to share those documents in the chat?
To share the what?
The documents?
Yes, I have the links, and I will share them all as soon as we finish our presentation. Is that okay? Or
Thank
do you
you.
want them now?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Where works for you?
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so Bethany, there we do have this committee and we do have homework, and so you're doing all the homework that has been parsed out to so many committee members. So my hat is off to you for taking on this task and this charge yourself. But hopefully that committee is on its way for you, and you can say, hey, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are yours. So that's what I do. Tricia will send a list of the newly submitted, either they're modified or they are new. They're submitted to the committee for review. And we, as she was saying, we divvy them up essentially. And so if you can go to the next slide, Tricia. So what we do is then we check them, and so we see the original SLO. We'll stick with course SLOs right now. We see the original course SLO and its modifications, so we can kind of see where they're moving if it's not a brand new SLO. So we, as Bethany was saying, our checklist is similar to yours in that we make sure it starts with a bloom. So we meaning the faculty member on the ASLO committee. Does it start with a bloom? Does it align with the course outline of record? As we were saying, on and on. I really like to look at I like to compare with the objectives that of course are much more specific knowledge, specific abilities, as we were saying, as opposed to the overreaching kind of takeaway outcome. So discerning between those two is very important, I think, because often faculty don't, and they are often a little too narrow for the student learning outcomes. So in my experience, that is one of the issues. And so if there is an issue, if we do have a question, if we are concerned with a bloom word or a non-bloom word, etc., too many verbs to start, we pull it. And that's what we do as committee. We will pull them and discuss them. We don't leave it up to just that committee member to make the decisions, but rather as a team, we'll say, I was wondering, do you know, this is your content area, not mine, etc. And so we discuss them. So these questions and comments and discussion are really fruitful at our meetings, because obviously we're learning constantly, and the process is it's developing, it's progressing, it's ever changing, it's dynamic. So that's why the monthly meetings are that as well. They're dynamic, and so always learning. So I think we have, Tricia, if we have the next slide, I think we have an example of tech review and some tech review notes. So if we can, we've highlighted in red those submissions that needed reassessment to be reviewed and probably sent back and redone. So for example, the first is a library course, and it actually, the modified SLO, demonstrate effective research strategies, was actually the same as its outcome, demonstrate effective research strategies, if not exactly, then very similar. And so because of that, that's too broad. And so we need to narrow that one down, taking that back to library, of course, with most respect, as you both mentioned, and deferring to the expertise of the faculty member. And so that's just an example. Now I know you're thinking, so how do we, because I saw this in the chat just ever so briefly, how do we get this into the form that Trisha, the rubric that Trisha had in the previous slide? So here's, I'm going to get kind of technical. We can actually cut and paste, because I saw a question, it went by so quickly. How do you what do you mean copy it? We actually, and I don't know if this is what you meant, but we actually cut and paste into the rubric. So it's nice and quick. So we cut and paste the original. I'm talking mostly about modifying SLOs right now. Cut and paste the original, cut and paste this modified SLO, and work the checklist. And then there's a large area for comments, and then we can write comments about our assessment of the SLO. That gets sent and put into, and Trisha helped me with the software program. It's put into a.
Sure. So maybe I can give just a little bit more background to Melinda. So this process that Melinda is talking about, she's talking about, taking the homework and then completing the checklist, because ultimately, if we pull an SLO that was submitted and we want it to be revised by the department, we want them to have our notes. We want them to know why we want it to be revised or what our concerns were. And so that checklist is completed and it's uploaded into a college level SharePoint folder, basically. So all the individual subcommittee members complete their checklist, and then when it comes time to communicate back with the departments, then I can just take that checklist and send it directly back to my departmental colleagues, right? And so also, I just wanted to point out a couple things here with this. There were more red SLOs here on this particular screenshot than there typically are in an ASLO subcommittee meeting. And there were only 14 that had come through, which is not that common. A lot of times we have a larger, more comprehensive list, right? Because there are just so many courses and programs at our institution. But with library, the faculty had submitted the same SLOs for their courses and for their programs. And so a course SLO and a program SLO are totally not the same thing. And so they needed to be differentiated. And so we had a course SLO technical review and a program SLO technical review. And we just had to send them all back to the library area and say, hey, this was our concern. Please adjust it. And they were like, oh, duh, okay, no problem, right? And then they had a direction and they knew what they needed to do. This music 200, the first SLO was approved, no problem. The second one, they tried to change it to a verb that isn't a Bloom's verb. So that was a simple correction, right? And then for our math SLOs here, we thought that they might be too broad, maybe more appropriate for program SLOs. And so we were going to ask them to come in and to be a little bit more specific, because this is a non-credit program. And we want our students to be able to walk away saying, hey, I was able to do this, this, and this as a result of taking these courses. So yes, so then, like Melinda said, they take what's here on this homework, they submit their checklist, and then we have the conversation in ASLO, and all of this red and green takes place, and the additional notes at the bottom take place. And so then at the end of the ASLO subcommittee meeting, my SLO team can communicate that out to the departments. These ones were approved, these ones we'll like to request a revision on, and here are our notes for those revisions. Please let me know if you have questions. And then I would say that this is where more of my one-on-one meetings come in, right? Where folks are like, oh, I don't quite know what you meant, or can we do it together? I'd love to work a little bit more in depth. And so then we'll have some one-on-one meetings. So that's the course SLO perspective. Are you ready for program SLOs, Melinda?
Sure. It's very similar. I think that we've talked about this in terms of what makes a good course or program SLO. The overall overarching understanding of an goal of the program is what we're looking for here. So it definitely needs to start with a higher level Bloom's verb, as we were saying. You mentioned the levels, Bethany, and we're looking at something that starts at the higher levels, addressing critical thinking. And again, is it in line with the college's mission? And once again, the language is aligned. Well, the language of the PSLO addresses each of the criteria. So students can do this or that at the end of the program. All right, determine if the PSLO would be understandable to students in the discipline. Once again, understanding. Consider if the outcome is measurable. Yes, is it rubric? Is it quiz? Is it something else? And then we make these assessments, review the program SLOs that have been submitted, and if need be, if they need to be revised, they're pulled again at the ASLO meetings. We discuss them, and so with the broader goals in mind, we do the same sort of thing. We discuss whether or not they meet all of our criteria. So, Tricia, if you could move to our examples. So, as you see here, for business administration, the new SLO that was created had 2 Bloom's verbs, and we thought that one analyze would encompass both of those and better address what the students need to do. And that's what we've been talking about, those types of changes and revisions. Below we see develop an understanding. There's your understanding word, Bethany. And so it might be better to, especially for a program SLO, we want to go into higher level learning and demonstrating that higher level of learning. So another Bloom's term might be better. Application, demonstration are often better than develop an understanding, especially for a program SLO. So I know that that's something that you're all doing. And I saw there were a lot of questions about the process, right, Tricia? I don't know if you saw those. So I'm going to hand that back to Tricia. I don't know if we want to open it up for questions. Tricia?
Yes, so as far as process, I guess I didn't see, I don't know what those questions were, so maybe somebody who's been monitoring the chat a little bit more could help. I think that as far as this, the only thing, as far as PSLOs, the only thing I wanted to point out is that across our institution, programmatically, almost all of our assessment methods are CSLO to PSLO mapping. And that's because we're really encouraging that course to program mapping. We want to see that alignment taking place very intentionally at the institution. And there are only a very few cases where CSLO to PSLO mapping is not the assessment method. And that would be, those cases would be when an outside accreditor requires a certain kind of assessment, right? Like in a nursing program or something like that. So I thought that might be helpful to share. And then again, I think I'd already mentioned this, that after those conversations, we communicate back with the department heads, the SLO facilitators, our department level liaisons, and if there's a different faculty author, we communicate with all 3 of those folks, right, about their approvals or their revision requests. And the approvals go into effect, and the revision requests probably will come back through ASLO in the next month. And this is the way that we endeavor to hold our SLO statements to a high standard across the institution, so that our students are really walking away receiving what we have promised to teach them and to infuse into them by the end of their time in our courses and our programs. Enrique.
Trisha, one of the questions was raised, is this a voluntary or a requirement of the process of faculty going through this review?
This is a requirement. No SLO is approved or changed unless it passes through the technical review process at LBCC. So yeah, it's pretty standard. Of course, the faculty, they have to meet the criteria, but they have full reign, if you will, to use their expertise to create SLO statements that they feel very strongly about, but it still has to pass through our review. And if we, on the previous slide, we had said maybe analyze, so we would pass that along as our recommendation. They are free to accept or reject our recommendation, right? We're just putting forward a recommendation because we felt like it's really hard to measure, identify, and describe through mapping, right? But if you use analyze, then it encapsulates both of those items and allows us to measure it a little bit more clearly. And so again, the faculty authors are able to say, no, I don't like your change, but I like this one as I go back through the process. But yes, it is a requirement for all of our SLOs.
And is that, and what you're providing, they're just recommendations?
Yes, so when
Okay.
we communicate back with the department, we'll tell them a revision is needed. One recommendation is this, but if you feel to go another way or have a better idea, we're more than willing to accept that. We're never going to tell somebody you need to revise it and revise it our way. That would be very insensitive of the faculty voice and of their expertise. And I think that always when you're communicating back with the departments about a revision request, a nuanced approach is very important. We have to be sensitive, right? Because they really are the content area experts. And I would never want to tell somebody in comm studies how they should teach their course or what their SLO should be, or somebody in math. That's not my area. Like that's beyond my purview. But my purview is to demand high quality SLO statements. And so I can go back to the departments and say, hey, this SLO statement isn't quite where we need it to be yet. Here's a recommendation, but if you'd like to go a different way, we'd love to hear it. And I've never had, in my 2 years, I've never had pushback or frustration or, there's a lot of buy-in for this process across our campus, and people like it. They think that it's clear, they know what they need to do. And if they don't, they often reach out to have a meeting before they would submit their SLO. So oftentimes, again, by the time something comes to ASLO, there have been a few pairs of eyes on it. And so there aren't a whole lot of revision requests that have to be made each month. There are some, but not a whole lot.
Thank you. And last question real quick. Regarding the mapping, how do you, you have institutional learning outcomes per learning outcomes and course level outcomes. How does it relate to using your Bloom's taxonomy as, your verbs from course to program?
Okay, so maybe I can go ahead and share a different screen here briefly. Oh, can you all see this, my SLO action verbs? Okay, so this is our approved list. So Bethany has her list. It's one page. It might be more user-friendly than mine. Ours has a little description, and then we allow different verbs to be used to address the different domains. So we allow verbs at the cognitive domain, for the affective domain, and even for the psychomotor domain. Of course, I promise to make this list available to you. But right here, we have this disclaimer in red. PSLOs must begin with verbs at this level or higher in each case, because we know that in order to transfer, or by the time you accomplish a program, you should be at the critical thinking level or higher. And so to answer Margaret's question in the chat, I think we would hope that at least one of the course SLOs that map to that program SLO would be at that level or higher. But we don't get that detailed where we look at every single course that is mapped and ensure that. Really, we're looking at, is this PSLO overarching? And keeping in mind that in order to meet that PSLO, those course SLOs have to prepare the students to do that. So of course, if there's some disconnect, then when it comes time to analyze and act on program student learning outcomes, there's often the opportunity to then reflect on the course SLOs that map to it. And later in our series of Friday SLO talks, I'm going to show you our program SLO dashboard that presents our results. And it is lovely in the sense that it shows our program SLO, and then it shows also all of the course SLOs that map to it. So there's the ability for faculty to see that in visual presentation in a way that's as clear as possible.
Mhm.
Jarek?
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Tricia. Would you please elaborate a little bit on the structure around which the SLO assessment occurs? So ASLO committee versus academic senate versus curriculum versus, how does it play out in Long Beach City College? And then do you have any examples of interdepartmental conversations? So math talking to chemistry or English talking to philosophy, things like that.
Yeah, I definitely do. So, okay, our structure at our institution is that academic senate gives our curriculum committee full purview over curriculum, right? So when you're talking about, the 10+1 and the variety of things where we rely primarily upon, for all of the instructional things, academic senate gives purview to curriculum. So then ASLO is a subcommittee of curriculum. So our assessment subcommittee then operates under the umbrella of curriculum with the view to ensuring a high standard for all of our SLO statements, which of course are one of the crucial components of the course outline of record. So that's kind of our institutional structure, where ASLO reports to curriculum, curriculum has purview over instruction, and then what curriculum approves then goes to the Board of Trustees. And then related to the departments talking to each other, we have a couple interdepartmental degrees, and I can speak to one because in my department, we have a teacher preparation program, right? Mm-hmm. And the key courses within that teacher preparation program are clearly education courses, but we also have a child development course and a math course, right? And so in order to analyze and act on our program student learning outcomes, our child development department, our math department, and our reading department work together to ensure the efficacy of our program. And so there are definitely conversations that happen related to how to improve student learning after seeing the results of assessment.
Sounds good. Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tricia. Enrique.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Our next presenter, Darla Anderson. You ready? You muted.
I guess not, because I had the mute on.
Well, take it away, Darla.
Okay, it's just such a nice following such wonderful presentations. I'm looking at this more from the faculty perspective, kind of after you've all done this work and how we continue on doing this work with, within your class and with students. So I'm following all the hard work that's happened, trying to develop very strong PSLO and course SLOs. And then what do we do when we're in the classroom? And so it's a very different perspective, but I hope it's as useful for all of you as well. So I wanted to give a little bit of sense of where I'm coming from, because I didn't take the typical route of going for faculty and then having to do assessment. I was faculty, and then I was involved with this private art school that was getting accredited. So we had to go through assessment training. We also then as part of our accreditation, had to examine, develop our whole program. Everybody, it was a small school, so everybody was working on the, our mission and looking at our values statement. And then within our programs, developing the program SLOs and the course SLOs. So I really got my hands, dirty being involved in this and doing it at the level, since it was a small school, everybody was involved in it. If you were a faculty, can you hear? Oh, if you were a faculty member, you were doing the work. And then I moved on to working at, I still do at Cal State Northridge. And then because I'd had this expertise, I was involved for quite a number of years in looking at the annual assessments of the program SLOs. So we would have to, as part of the committee within the department, we were, taking the work that everyone had done over the years, having to develop an assessment tool that then helped us evaluate how the students within the program, were they meeting the SLO, were they exceeding it, were they approaching it, and then trying to come up with, once we got all that data, recommending how to, whether, it was time to reevaluate the SLOs, the program SLOs, or, maybe recommend something, close the loop on the assessment. So that's where I'm coming from. And now I'm a faculty member teaching in communication studies, as I said, at Oxnard and at Northridge. But having this kind of training really helped me understand blooms and having to work with blooms. And I noticed somebody in the chat had mentioned, well, what is blooms? What are the levels? So I thought it's nice to have just a reminder, and this is a very standard Bloom's taxonomy, where we're looking at these level of cognition. And as Jarek talked about, I really appreciated those quotes that you had at the beginning, because they really reminded us what Bloom's and his colleagues were doing when they were developing this taxonomy and trying to understand, what are we doing when we're teaching? What are we, what learning is happening, and how can we show that we are doing what we say we're doing? So and in fact, I had talked to a friend just recently, and she said, isn't Bloom's ancient? Hasn't it been around forever? And it's like, yes, it is. And it's still good. And she's been retired. Well, she's 80, so she's been retired quite a number of years. And I said, but we're still using it, and we're still, it's still part of our whole process. And she goes, well, that's good. Because she had lived with it many years ago, and that it still is standing the test of time. She had also said, don't we as teachers just take this in? We just know it without thinking about it. And I think to some extent we do. And especially after you start working with it, after you start developing program student learning outcomes or course outcomes, it does become a part of you. It does become a part of your evaluation of, what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish in a classroom. But what happens too is, and that's very much what my friend was saying, is we just integrate it and we don't stop and think about it and reassess what we're doing. And that's what's wonderful with the programs, with Tricia and Bethany, is that you take it away from being what you're working on and you put it back into your colleagues to evaluate what's going on with your student learning outcomes, and to have this continual improvement that happens, that we hope happens as we teach our courses and then teach them another semester, etc. So when I'm saying in my course, and my use of Bloom's in my course, is that, of course, we have the course student learning outcomes, but then as an instructor, I like to use them in my class, either if it's an in-person class or if it's in modules. I want to say, this is what we're going to do this week. So that forces me as the instructor. And at first it was kind of hard, but it was forcing me to break down those core student learning outcomes and say, well, what are the components of those? What are students needing to, what are the, the behaviors? What are the skills that they need to learn in order to meet this student learning outcome? So just by having it as part of the weekly lesson, this is why we're having this lecture. This is why you're doing well. And as I said, it's also incorporated very much into my I have, like many instructors, especially since we're using Canvas, there's a lot of assignment requirement. I have a page that has my assignment requirements and my information. And even there to say, this is how, this is what core student learning outcomes that we are trying to meet by this assignment, that you're, hopefully, once you complete this assignment, this will help you in this way. These are the skills that you are trying to have. Having to do this as an instructor, kind of on a weekly basis and an assignment basis, it really changes your focus to all the things that we want with these student learning outcomes, about being student-centered, about having things that are measurable. It really, again, and this is, as we've already talked about today, you've got your, if you're taking it from the high, you've got your mission statement, you've got what your university or your college is doing. With general education courses, a lot of times there's the learning outcomes for those. And then you've got your program student learning outcomes and your course. So now we're taking it down to the level where the work gets done. But even then, thinking about it at that level is so beneficial to the instructor as well as the student. Okay, and as an instructor, by having to do that, it helps me organize my course much better, helps me see, how we always try to scaffold. It helps me with that scaffolding process. It also helps me, and I've, some of the training that I've done more recently, it's so useful to realize, is everything that I'm having students do, is it really at the lower order? Like I said, I tend, because I love those verbs, and I get a little nervous at the higher order level. So it is helping. Here's our verbs, everybody. This is, it kind of lives with me. I think we all get our own version of the active verbs, or we'll get it from our assessment or our department. I actually just found some research while I was working on this that researched universities and colleges in the UK, and they found that across those universities, there was only about 50 verbs that they were using that were the same. And then there were verbs there was about 10 verbs that were different, but they were trying to see, was there uniformity across the universities in the UK? And it turned out not so much. That's still something we're all working on, but at least this is getting us to that point. So in using these verbs and paying attention to blooms and paying attention to what I'm trying to do in class, it helps me not just break it down into measurable activities, but it also helps me ensure I am getting the work across all levels of thinking, all of our cognition, the lower level as well as the higher level. And sometimes I realized I was having work done at the higher level, but I wasn't giving credit to that. I wasn't having, like in public speaking, in communication studies and public speaking, we have students critique each other. So that is at this higher level. You're at the evaluative level and realizing that they are bringing in skills from all levels of Bloom's. So anyway, this is my favorite chart. I'm sure some of you feel the same way about that. The other thing that I do, and I think more people are doing this, I bring it into the classroom by explaining it to students. All right, so we do know that students learn better when they know what they have to do, which is why we try to engage in assessment activities that help them, really understand what they have to do in order to, pass the course. But I think they also learn better when they know why they're having to do it. So I will, especially in my upper level courses, although I do have this at the 100 and 200 level courses, to say this is what is Bloom's taxonomy, and of course most of them have never heard it, and it's to help them understand what are you doing in college and what is this coursework about and how does this course fit into the program, which fits into your into your whole course of study. Why are you getting the degree that you're getting? And why do these courses matter? So, and I teach a lot of general education courses. That's true of a lot of courses at the community colleges. So this is a way to kind of push back or open students' minds to that what you're doing in your courses, what you're doing in weekly in terms of the work is part of an overall curriculum, and we as instructors, as people who, as staff, as people who are dealing with assessment and thinking of student learning outcomes all the time, it just makes sense to us. I mean, we're working on the curriculum, but students seldom have that in their perspective. So when you kind of start with, well, this is what, as an instructor, I'm starting with, I'm looking at this taxonomy, there's certain, and I go through the student learning outcomes as well. Usually I kind of start with the outcomes and then I'll start with the taxonomy when we start with assignments so that they can see how the two connect. And then again, I include it in with the assignments, with the purpose, why are we doing this assignment? How does it fit in with all these other things that we're doing? And what will this help you gain in terms of this class and overall the skills that you're going to get from, and hopefully the learning that happens in the course. I have experimented too. This works better in some courses than others with actually, and again, it depends on the time that you have. I have experimented with students coming together and developing outcomes, at the end of the semester. I want to be able to do, and then we take time and we see what they want to do. What are the outcomes that they want? A lot of that is so that they will take ownership of those, just like as faculty, we take ownership of what's going on. And so by doing that, they take ownership of kind of the outcomes and having goals in the class and seeing how those goals are connected to these very concrete ideas of an outcome, so that they can see that, to get to the goal, there are steps they have to take. And what usually happens is students will develop these outcomes and then we connect them to the ones, the student learning, the course student learning outcomes that we have, and show how that what they want is pretty much what we're wanting them to learn in the class. So the more that I can get them to take ownership for their work in the class by having goals, by understanding the concrete steps that they need to achieve those goals, is just icing on the cake for me, right? That's just where I want things to happen. So I think that understanding Bloom's, bringing it into the classroom, sharing it with students, and sharing our student learning outcomes as something that is what we're doing. It's not just on a piece of paper and we never look at it again, but it's actually what we do in the classroom. Ideally helps students. It also helps me as the instructor, because then that continuous improvement, you're trying to say, did that really work? Is this really the steps that we take to achieve, very, like, one of our simple outcomes is to, whoops, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Sorry, this is what happens when you put things on top of your computer keyboard. But by by having students use the Bloom's taxonomy in their coursework and understand why we're doing it, it helps them, but it also helps me. Again, it helps me to see, if I have a course learning outcome, write a complete sentence speech outline, and then I break it down into, writing main points into short declaratory sentence, identify evidence, distinguish evidence from main points. That helps me see over time, are these really the steps, and are we doing it, or is something else happening? So, and then my last point here, I just wanted to, show, whoops, so sorry, folks. I'm usually much more techie than this. I like how we are continuing to use Bloom's for our online activities, our online classes, or our online activities. And this was an infographic. I was from ASU, and it was part of a program that I recently took on effective online teaching practices. And I wanted to point out both it's using Bloom's to show how Bloom's can be used with an online class. And we even had one of the 25 modules was establishing powerful learning outcomes. And anytime you take a course with pedagogy, and that we continue to say we need these learning outcomes. And this course was very, this whole course program, or this whole program, was very much about tying that and creating almost a matrix alignment, or an alignment matrix for your class as well, for your assignments, as aligned to your course learning outcomes, and making sure that you have a good weighted, have some at the lower level thinking skills all the way to the higher order skills. So I wanted to thank you for this, and for allowing me the opportunity to present kind of my perspective as someone who uses it pretty much every day and in every class. And that, I know sometimes it's hard to get buy-in from faculty, but I think the more that people work with it, the more that they see how it aids in their, having a course that produces, it helps students reach the outcomes that we want them to do, and that we can show we are teaching them what we're teaching. I think it's better for all of us. So thank you. Any questions?
Darla, thank you so much. Quick question. I know it's so nice to see faculty using this at the at the ground level, right? I mean, right at the root level. And it's so what inspired you to do this, to start using Bloom's taxonomy and start using those verbs to really analyze the students' critical thinking skill, or whatever?
Well, because I really, as I said, I started out as I was faculty, but really got into the assessment of teaching, and at the larger level, and it just made sense to apply it at my level. It's again, as Bethany said, this continuous improvement. I mean, if you want to teach well, and you want to make sure that students are, learning what you hope they learn, you've got to have a concrete way of measuring that, right? And you have to, so it's just understanding and kind of accepting that assessment and realizing the value of assessment, realizing this value and taking it for the larger, kind of the larger picture and saying, but this is where things are going. Isn't this our whole point of all of our assessment programs and our student learning outcomes? That's the whole point of all of this, is it needs to go down to this level, in each class, each instructor. I mean, we often think of it this way, but it's also built up this way. It's built up at the ground level for teachers using it, and more teachers are using this. I mean, more teachers are doing it. Since the pandemic, all these courses that we take in terms of online teaching, it is being, included into much more of our training, and how to have a course that is more student-centered. I mean, I really do think it helps reorient our thinking to the students and what, again, the outcomes we want from those students. Okay, any other questions? Oh, Jarek, yeah?
Yes, Darla, I'm big on this student question, and you articulated it very well, that you actually do make it very clear to students what it is that they are going to learn. Would you like to elaborate on the process and how do students actually react to this? Because when you go to, ratemyprofessor.com, nobody talks about what we are going to learn. We are talking only about how easy it is to complete the course. That's what matters, right? Would you please share some thoughts on this aspect of, again, sharing the importance of learning with students?
Well, and I think it comes from the responsibility of the course, right? Who's responsible for their learning? And I think, and I have trouble, probably like many teachers, because our whole thing is, look, this is so fascinating. Let me help you do all of this. And having those good boundaries that say, okay, I'm going to create the environment where you can learn, where you have opportunities. I'll help you in every way I can, but I can't do the work for you. And to say that, yes, learning is work, but it's work that has such a great payoff. So, I mean, of course, they always go, yes, this is so great. I'm so glad you told it. I always frame it in the thing about, this is what school's all about, call it, these are my secrets, so you can be successful in college, like many of us do. And then saying it helps you if you understand what this is all about and why we're doing this. And I have to keep bringing it back. Obviously, you have to keep it up through the whole semester. And then ideally, when we get towards the end of the semester, I throw the question back on them. So my goal is that they integrate it and that it becomes part of their process. This is how they're lifelong learners, right? And some of them have already started doing this. Others, and especially at the first and second year students, your community college level courses or your 100 and 200 level courses at CSUN, they haven't thought of it this way. The ones that continue on and do well, they do integrate it, but especially when you're dealing with first year and second year students, you're part of your task is kind of teaching them what a university or college is about, and that the responsibility is on them. So the more that I can talk about it and then get them answering the questions about it, that, again, by the end of the semester, when I say, well, why are we doing this? And what does this help you do? And, what are you getting out of it? So it's again, our scaffolding, right? We constantly have to scaffold so that we can get to the point where they can jump off and do it themselves.
Thank you, Darla. There was some discussion in the chat, and Bethany, you can have some input on this too. Darla, how do you get your faculty to buy into this, this collaborative effort of mapping your student learning outcomes to, program learning outcomes, and at the same time, using those verbs of Bloom's taxonomy? How do you get the buy-in?
Well, okay, so I am faculty, so it's more working with colleagues, right? You're working with them, you're sharing what you have. Everybody wants to find a better way to do things. As I said, I've taken various training, and so you share, oh, I just did this. Have you thought about this? You will realize I'm at the ground level, so I'm sharing it with them, and kind of sharing the perspective of somebody who is using it, and then it helps with my class. It helps with the day-to-day work on the class. For me, especially, I have to have like, what are we doing in this class? But obviously, from the student-centered perspective, like hopefully you're, such as I said, like define the forms of evidence, identify the characteristics, those kind of things. For me, it helps in keep my class in order too. It keeps my students, they see it on the board, I see it as well. But when you're sharing, I guess it's more the buy-in is because we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. And if you can show that it helps, that it makes the task easier, then that's a buy-in, and again, I guess the department that I'm in at Northridge and even at Oxnard, that there is a buy-in from our chairs and other faculty, the tenured faculty. So that helps. You have to have that kind of environment of assessment. Yeah.
Thank you. And Bethany, can you address some of the chat, the disagreement or lack of better words, what transpired at your college?
Oh, sure. Can I tag on to Darla's a little bit too, though? I think that if you can make it beyond just one person in terms of buy-in, if you can make it so, like, I think for my campus, we have support from the program review committee saying we're going to look at your SLO data. So your SLOs there has to be quality there, right? We have support from the accreditation team, because if you're in the California community college system, that is a standard and it's not going away in the new standards, and it's an important piece of it. So I think that's kind of like it's a little bit of the carrot and the stick element of, you got to do it. It's a requirement. So let's do a good job at it. And that it benefits your program overall. That's a little I'd just throw in there. But yeah, there was a question in the chat. Let me scroll up to the original question about maybe areas who want to map. So if you have a program, right, so you have a degree or certificate, particularly with a degree, you're going to have courses on there that don't necessarily directly relate to your discipline. So I'll use math as an example again. I think we have a computer science programming class on there that's part of our requirements to get the degree, but then there's general ed stuff, there's things that are not all math. That would be fun for me, but I don't know if anyone else would agree with me that an all math degree would be fun. We need the other things too. So it's kind of, do all of those things need to map to your PLOs? Do all of those SLOs need to map up? And it's been a little bit of a challenge, because some people say, no, why should they? I didn't write the outcomes for computer science. Why should that relate to my math degree? But other people go, what they learned in computer science is important for my math degree. So where my college is right now is at a place where we kind of let people do their own thing. We let departments make final decision, but I do play a little bit of devil's advocate. So depending on which side they land on, right? So if they say, yes, computer science should count, I just make sure they're aware of, just make sure that you didn't write those outcomes. So you didn't, as math faculty, we didn't write the computer science outcomes, and we may not have as much control over the grading of that, and that will affect our program. And then if they say, no, I don't want to include it, I said, be aware, it does affect, your students are learning things in that class. So I was kind of on both sides. I kind of try to play devil's advocate and just make sure they're aware of the big picture. So they're making an informed decision, not a gut reaction to, I don't want computer science in there, or I do want computer science, you know, just trying to make sure they see the whole picture. The other question that was asked was about cross-listed courses. I do not have a perfect answer to this. I know we're all experiencing a lot of cross-listing, again, in the community college California system, with things like ethnic studies, right? What do we do with cross-listing? Do we mandate they have the same outcomes? Do we allow them to have different outcomes? That is a hard question, and I think it might vary a little bit from campus to campus. I know ethnic studies, there's a little more rigidity in what those outcomes have to look like, but I would bring those faculty together. So the example was botany and agriculture in a cross-listed course. I would bring them together if possible to talk about what outcomes they want to see, but ultimately what I would do is let the final decision rest with the departments. So even though it's technically the same course, botany's perspective and values from a botanist's, you know, point of view might not be the same as what an agricultural faculty might value. And they might want to see different skills on the outside, like after the class is completed. And I would say they should have that room to make that final decision for what works for them. But it is important that they talk and have an awareness of what the other is doing so that they're not completely unrelated. But I personally would not kind of force it. I don't know if that answers the question well enough, but.
Betty, so
Sure.
Another question, or similar question, I'm sorry.
That's
So
okay.
the core of that class, wouldn't the objectives and the outcomes be the same on the core?
So I think it
If
depends.
you have a cross-listed courses?
It depends, because I think it depends on how your areas set it up. I know we have some that are kind of properly cross-listed, and those do match, but it's like I'm thinking we have like an ethnic studies and a history class or sociology class that overlaps. I think those are the same because you're right, of the way it's lined up. But there are other ones where if it's technically separate classes, because right, curriculum has the right to place courses in disciplines, and we could put them in multiple disciplines, right? So if they're taught separately, I would argue they could maybe be separate. But I do think that that's a completely it's a local decision. So it's how your campus operates, it's what your curricular processes are. And I would say if this is something you're seeing a lot of conflict over, take it above just you and your committee, take it to your curriculum committee, take it to your academic senate, get feedback from other faculty. I think anytime you can make it a full faculty voice decision, that strengthens whatever you end up doing. So you can always point and go, it wasn't me just feeling a certain day one way. The whole faculty body voted to do this a certain way, and that's why we're doing it this way. That would be my approach. Does that help, Enrique?
Yes, thank you. Daddy, do you have any questions?
Yarek had asked if I would share a little bit more also related to mapping, which I'm happy to do. I think that with mapping and determining whether, you know, folks should map just their core courses or their electives, like with and everything else at our institution, I think the best policy, or, you know, if at all possible, is to leave the decisions with the experts. And so what we do at LBCC is we present these mapping files. And if I end up sharing next week when we talk about alignment, I'll share my files with you. I don't have them quickly accessible at the moment, but we send these files, they're Excel files, and we list all of the courses and the course SLOs and all of the program and the program SLOs. And we ask the faculty to map which course SLOs lead to the attainment of these program SLOs and at what level. So for example, through this course SLO, students are going to be introduced to the program learning outcome content. But through this SLO and the other course, they're going to get that content reinforced. And through then this kind of later class within the program, this PSLO content is going to be mastered. And so we ask faculty to look at, to conduct an analysis of the core courses and the elective courses and determine, hey, which of these SLOs are going to lead to our students' abilities to meet this program learning outcome content. Some departments simply look at their courses. Some departments say, no, you know, the reason it's a program is because it brings in so many other elements, and we want some of these elective PSLOs or course SLOs to lead students to meet our program learning outcomes. If it were just within our department, maybe it would be a certificate, right? But this is a degree, right? And so it has different program learning outcomes. And so they make those decisions. In addition, sometimes, like in our art history associate degree for transfer, for example, there is a course that the Cal States require, a drawing course within an art history program. And so the faculty think that it's valuable and it's part of the program, but they don't feel like any of those course SLOs specifically lead to the attainment of the program SLOs, and therefore they do not map it. And so that is one example of how we deal with mapping, and we really leave it to the faculty in the area to look at those mapping documents, to make the decisions, and then we, of course, gather and aggregate the results of assessment into a Tableau dashboard so that they can see them visualized. But I do know, maybe if we've got a couple more minutes, I can just share my screen here one more time. I have this up on our website. And this is an example of how our database management program is mapped. Of course, this is pictorial form. I don't do this for all of my areas. This is just an illustration for an example. But we can see then, here's our program mapping. Here are the Associate of Science in Database Management has 3 program learning outcomes. And these are the course learning outcomes that lead to students' ability to attain these program outcomes. You can see here that these ones are introduced, these are reinforced, and this one is mastered. And you can also see that these course SLOs here at the bottom were not selected for mapping. We don't know why, but we can see definitely that certain SLOs were left off. And that we consider as the purview of the department. They're the experts, they know what should lead to the attainment. They've intentionally designed their course SLOs, intentionally designed their program SLOs. And so we want those decisions to rest with them. And then in addition, ultimately, when they look at the results, if we've told them you have to map something and they didn't feel good about it, then they're trying to analyze results and to find meaning in the data, and it's less meaningful to them. Whereas if they've intentionally set, you know, the courses that they've wanted to be mapped to map, and then they gather the results and they look at the results of assessment, then they can really talk together as program faculty. Hey, this is the meaning we've gotten out of those results, and this is what we want to do to leverage program strengths or to address program weaknesses. And so these are the actions we're going to take to close the loop on assessment. So this is kind of our approach. Maybe if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Cheryl Pearson, would you like to elaborate more on that, or that Trisha's question answered?
So I'm just kind of curious, because we're, you know, pretty much on the same page as the rest of what we've been talking about this morning, and we're looking at, you know, the courses mapping to the PSLOs, and then the type of data that we want to extract from our PSLOs, so that, you know, that can be part of the instructors or faculty going back and assessing their courses to make sure that they're capturing the data that we're looking for. So a lot of it has to do with the diversity of the students on the campus, and are we reaching all the different groups? And so I was just curious if that's essentially what everybody else is doing too, or are there other things that I need to be thinking about for capturing that data?
Anyone? Tricia or Bethany, would you like to elaborate on that?
I'm sorry, I still didn't fully understand the question, so I can't elaborate.
So I guess maybe what I'm looking for is what, you know, when you're mapping everything up to the program SLOs. So this begs another question as well. So we do not currently have ISLOs in place. We can put them in place pretty easily. We just haven't gotten to that point yet. So are you extracting data from your ISLOs to see overall how you're doing as a college campus, or are you extracting data from your PSLOs, and then what kind of data are you looking at for the overall assessment?
I'll give it an attempt, Cheryl, and you can tell me if I've answered your question. So
Okay.
my institution does have institutional learning outcomes, and we also do mapping, but we don't map our program outcomes. We map our course outcomes because we still feel like we map our courses, and then faculty, and I think I can elaborate on this more a little bit next week and it'll be a little clearer, but we ask faculty which courses or through which course SLOs are students going to attain the institutional learning outcomes. And then within those courses, faculty conduct a direct assessment on Canvas of whether or not their students are meeting their institutional learning outcomes or not. So their ISLOs are assessed directly. And then we also disaggregate by unit completion when we look at institutional student learning outcome data. And we can say, hey, our students from 0 to 14 units who have completed 0 to 14 units at the institution are not achieving at the same level as students who have taken 45 or more units. Well, that we consider that to make sense, right? Because the 0 to 14 unit students are just getting their feet wet at the institution, right? And then we can also break that down by race, gender, and ethnicity, those kinds of things, race and ethnicity, gender, to see, are there populations that we're missing, or are there certain supports we need to offer to say our students of color who have achieved 0 to 14 units at the college, which is what we discovered is where our equity gap lies. And it makes the most sense, right? But still, what can we do to support those students and to leverage those weaknesses so that our students can continue to achieve all of our learning outcomes and to do so equitably by the time they leave our institution. As far as program learning outcomes, we're really looking at whether students' ability to obtain their course outcomes is leading to the attainment of their program learning outcomes. And that we look at as an aggregate score. And then we can also disaggregate by race and ethnicity, gender. Even we can disaggregate by student major to look at how the student majors did versus those who may have just been taking courses as part of a general education pattern or something like that. And so the data dashboards help us very much to visualize the data and to glean the information that we need so that we can, again, leverage strengths and address weaknesses.
Okay, thank you. That was good.
Derek?
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we are almost at the 12 o'clock hour here. So Alicia, if you could please comment on your ISLO comment you just posted, and we'll stop the recording after you're done, please, if you don't mind.
Sure. So with our institutional student learning outcomes, we do map them to our program outcomes. If I had the document, I could share it. I just can't find it quickly enough. But and basically, they did a survey of students that were graduating with their associates, and then they went through the data. And this handout that I gave kind of walks through that process. It talks about our institutional student learning outcomes and the results of the survey, even giving quotes from students to use as well. And that's how they use that data too. But we're also in the process of updating our institutional student learning outcomes. So I thought that might just be a quick resource to kind of see how that works. I really wish I could find that other document really quick because it shows how we map on, right now it's task stream, but it's going to be on, there we go. That might work if it comes through. it's going to be on Nuventive once we start Nuventive, but this is where we do our mapping is on task stream, and it kind of shows which institutional student learning outcome each program maps to and the program outcomes.
Right on. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing the PDF, the file.
Yeah.
Well, with that, let's go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you very much.